as promised, the much awaited tutorial. Now on this, I'm using the new Rosette Ruffle mould by Marvellous Moulds for the base tier. This top tier has been done using the new Scrunch Ruffle mould by Marvellous Moulds. And then that beautiful central tier I have just covered with a quilting effect. This whole cake has been covered with the sugar paste, which I have coloured myself. I have not turned it into modelling paste at all, and I'm going to guide you through everything step by step. If you want to purchase any of the moulds or the sugar paste, I will leave a link to all of these products for you in the description below this video. Please note I am not the seller of any of these products. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I am decorating cake dummies. However, if this was real cake, the base tier would be a 10-inch round, 6-inch deep, and the top tier would be a 6-inch round, 6-inch deep. The central cake dummy is something that you would purchase, decorate, and then you would assemble it all at the venue. I am going to be using the sugar paste, colouring it myself with Wilton Teal. So I want to show you on camera the sort of texture that the sugar paste actually is. Now, I have found this product absolutely amazing and I would highly recommend it. I will only recommend products that I have tried and tested, as you will all know, and I have been doing this for years. Now, this is very, very hard, as you can see, compared to many fondants, and it does take quite a lot of kneading. After doing some research also on their site, if it is not kneaded correctly, you can get elephant skin. But if you do knead it correctly, so it needs to be really warm, really pliable, and when you pull it apart, it will actually stretch in your hands. You know you have kneaded this properly. See how that stretched just then? But I'm doing a little bit at a time because it's really, really stiff. Now, the sugar paste goes an awful long way. It is more expensive than most other brands. However, you don't need to use as much. I still use other brands such as Renshaw's if I need a really deep colour like jet black or poppy red, as the sugar paste is not currently sold in these colours. I will also use another brand like Cover Paste to cover the cake drums because I need to roll a 5mm thick piece for a cake drum. You'll see that further on in this tutorial. And I don't see the point in using a really expensive fondant when I might as well use a cheaper one just to cover the drum. So I use loads of different things in my kitchen, but for an actual cake, especially if you've got something with sharp edges that's very, very deep, this product I would highly recommend. To colour this very versatile fondant, you just colour it like you would any other brand of fondant. So taking the colour of your choice. This is a Wilton Teal. I actually purchased it for a wedding cake and it's absolutely beautiful. Using a cocktail stick, simply place it on your fondant, knead it in and keep on adding a little bit until you get the colour that you desire. The next step is to cover both of the cakes, and I want you to see me roll this out and actually do all of this on camera, and then I'm going to add a photo and show you just how much I had left. So I started with the 1 kilogram pack of the sugar paste. I have coloured it the Wilton Teal colour. Simply dust down your surface and start to roll it out. Remember, you can roll this extremely thin. Take your time because it does not set very fast, so you've got more time to actually work with the fondant, and then we will be applying it to the 10-inch round, 6-inch deep cake dummy. So you can see how thin I have rolled this out and just how lovely and versatile it is. I'm now going to drape this over my rolling pin and then gently place it over the cake dummy. Now on the cake dummy I've already added water, but obviously you're going to be using cake, so the buttercream on there will act as a natural glue. So there's been no rips, no tears, no elephant skin, and I am now simply cutting off the excess, and then I'm going to smooth out all of those pleats on the sides of the cake with a cake smoother and my hands. So once you've smoothed it out, cut off any excess fondant, I just want to show you how much we actually have left from that single cake. Can you believe it? All of that fondant, and we're going to use that now to cover the 6-inch round cake dummy. I just want to show to you that I'm not actually using any extra fondant or anything. So I'm just taking what I've got left out of the bag. I'm going to roll this out on camera again and then simply cover the 6-inch round, 6-inch deep cake dummy. So once you have rolled this out lovely and thin again, we are then going to simply pick this up using the rolling pin. I find this the easiest way, and drape it over our 6-inch deep, 6-inch round cake dummy. Once it's on the dummy, simply negotiate the pleats. Remember, you do have more time to work with the sugar paste. It's not going to dry on you straight away. Very flexible, as you can see, because smaller cakes are more difficult to cover, especially when they're quite tall. I'm able to negotiate these pleats without leaving a mark on there. Simply then smooth it out and cut off any excess fondant. And I'm going to show you an image now at just exactly how much I have left out of using 1 kilogram of the sugar paste, and I have covered 2 very deep cake dummies. Now I want to make a start using these moulds. So for the top tier we're using the scrunch ruffle, and for the base tier the rosette ruffle mould. The only thing I've noticed with these moulds, they are amazing, but they do need an awful lot of fondant pushed into them. Now I'm just using the sugar paste. I am not turning it into modelling paste, so I've got another kilogram here, but further on I did have to actually colour a bit more because the moulds use so much fondant. So once you've got the fondant prepared in the colour of your choice, this is how I prepare my moulds, and I found I don't notice many other bakers do it this way. It's just something I came up with, but for these particular Simpress moulds, it really does work. So you're going to need some Trex vegetable fat and some icing sugar and also a brush. What we're going to start with, you can see all the detail we need to pick up on there. I'm going to start by greasing this mat with some Trex. This is something I haven't really noticed other bakers do. It's just a method that I've picked up myself. I always say there is never any wrong or right way in cake decorating. You do what's best for you. And I've had lots of people tell me they have struggled with some of these moulds, mainly the scrunch ruffle mould, saying it comes out and it can look like brain, or they've used a really dark colour and it's been quite difficult. I'm wondering if they've only used icing sugar. If you grease it with Trex vegetable fat like I'm doing here, use your brush to get into all those intricate details on there. Take your time, it needs to be greased really, really well. And then you add some icing sugar. You will find that your fondant comes out an awful lot easier. That's not all, we also need to do something else, which I'm going to now show you. So once it's fully greased, sprinkle over your icing sugar, and then you want to tip it upside down just so that there isn't too much icing sugar in there, preventing you from pushing in your fondant properly. Now remember, I'm working with the sugar paste. This is not modelling paste, and this is the first time for me as well using these moulds. Here, I did not roll out the sugar paste thick enough. No problem. Just use your initiative, and I'm able to then push it over the sides and back into the centre, look, just like that. but because it's fondant and not modelling paste, it works beautifully. And you'll notice I'm putting an awful lot of pressure. I'm taking my time because all of that pattern really needs to be picked up. Once I've done this, I'm then going to flip it upside down and use my rolling pin on the back of the actual Simpress mould. This just helps it pick up even more. The final tip for you, because we are using fondant in this tutorial and not modelling paste, I place it in the fridge. It will not make your fondant dry, but it will make it go hard so that you can physically take it out of the mould without actually damaging it. You can see here that I'm adding some more fondant because, again, I've just not added enough where the gaps are. I think it's important that you see this on camera. It's the first time I've used them. I've created an absolutely stunning cake. I've made it very, very easily. If I can do it, I always say you guys can. I'm going to fast forward this process just so that you can see the next steps. Smooth it out with a rolling pin on both sides. So on this side, and then flip it over and repeat. Okay then, so this has been in the fridge for a short while. You'll know when it's ready, when it's quite firm. You then simply peel away the mould. If you've left it in the fridge long enough, if you've greased it properly and added enough icing sugar, and also the fondant quality is extremely important, you will have no issues doing this whatsoever. I then simply place this on a tray with some icing sugar, on a baking tray, covered it with a food grade bag just to prevent the air from getting to it, and placed it back into the fridge. These are designed to fit even sized cakes, so your 10-inch, 12-inch, 8-inch, 6-inch, 4-inch, etc. You will need 5 for a 10-inch round, 4-inch deep cake. Ours is a 10-inch round, 6-inch deep cake. So you're going to need 5 of these for the bottom, and then we're simply going to be adding some more to the top and cutting off any excess fondant. To add them to your cake, it's really easy. Now, I'm choosing to use a steamer, so the water on there will act like a natural glue, but don't worry, you can always use edible glue. You simply want to then pick up each piece. Remember, you're going to need 5 to start off with, and place it directly onto the cake. What I love about these moulds is that they are that versatile. When you add the next one on, even though they do slot into each other, you can manipulate them slightly just using a Dresden tool, and it just makes them look like they fit even better, if that makes sense. So because they're not a certain pattern that's extremely perfect and it's full of ruffles, it's just really versatile, so easy to use, and the time that these save is absolutely unreal. I'm going to speed the next part up for you so that you can see me add the rest. I then just use my Dresden tool and neaten it up slightly where each panel needs. We're then going to do the top section. Now for the space that I have left, I have another panel. I'm simply sticking it on the same way I have the other panels, and then using a sharp knife, I'm going to cut off any excess fondant. Simply repeat this process around the rest of the cake. And that is the base tier completed. Simple, striking, and an absolutely amazing time saver. You can offer so much more now as a business to your customers. Now we're going to make a start covering the second tier, again using the sugar paste. Now for this, I'm using a large rolling pin again. I have a sharp knife, a couple of cake smoothers, and some icing sugar. Okay then, so again I've rolled this out so it's relatively thin, draping it over my rolling pin, and just see how easy it is to cover this cake dummy. Now this cake dummy is 8 inches deep and 8 inches wide. And as you know, it's a lot harder to cover the deeper cakes or cake dummies. It's got a very sharp edge. I've got no elephant skin, no tears. I'm simply going to smooth it around my cake. You've got more time than you do with most fondants. And then we're going to be adding the quilting effect before we fill in the centre. Again, this is such a simple effect that I'm about to add. Now you need to do this before the fondant dries, so as soon as you've covered the cake. You're not in a rush because this fondant does take longer to set, but it's so effective. It's simple, it's striking, and it's effective. Now this quilting tool is by Patchwork Cutters. I will leave another link for that for you in the description below this video. And all you do is emboss it into your cake. As long as your cake is an even size, so again, the 10 inch, 8 inch, 6 inch, 4 inch, 12 inch, etc., you will get a beautiful, flawless effect. Now, obviously, this is nowhere near as tall as the cake, so I need to do it along the base first, and then move it up and do it along the top. So I'm going to speed this process up for you, and then I'm going to be using the DK. I can't pronounce it very well, but it's basically the Draggy Kiss tool. Probably not pronounced that. It's basically to add edible pearls. A little tool, but it's so much easier to use because I don't get the pearls all over the kitchen floor, and it's an awful lot faster, so you can see me use that as well. So this is the fantastic little tool that I was telling you about. I purchased this at Cake International. Basically, you just add your edible pearls into the top, and then it's like a little gun, but they don't go everywhere. It fits 4mm pearls, so that's most average pearls that are on the market. And then where the quilting effect is, it just means it'll be so much easier and quicker for me to actually add these. If you would like to have a look at this product in more detail, again, I will leave a link for this for you in the description below this video. I literally call this effect simplicity at its best. Simple, effective, extremely striking, and can you imagine this as a dummy tier separating the other tiers on a wedding cake? We are now going to fill the centre, add a few flowers, and then decorate our top tier. So using some of our leftover sugar paste, we're now going to start by filling the centre. So I've just rolled out a very, very thin piece, and I'm going to do it in 2 halves. So I'm going to do the bottom half first. So I'm going to fill this with some cooled down boiled water just to act like a glue. And I'm actually going to turn this dummy upside down and do the remaining half. For the bits of the fondant that are actually sticking out, I'm simply using a very sharp knife to cut off any excess, but being very careful to not damage what we have already created on the outside of that beautiful cake dummy. Now all you want to do is flip your cake dummy upside down and repeat that process. We're then just going to add a few beautiful teal flowers on there, and we can finally decorate that top tier. All I'm doing here is using some of the leftover sugar paste that I have in the teal colour and a lovely blossom plunger with a small amount of edible glue. I'm just adding it around the rim. Obviously you can add any sort of decoration that you want. Now it's time to use the scrunch ruffle mould, the one that many people have had issues with, but I just use it the same way that I did the Rosette Ruffle mould. So again, using some Trex vegetable fat and a brush, make sure you pick up on all of those indentations in that mould so none of your fondant gets stuck in there. I'll speed this process up for you. Again, sprinkle it with icing sugar, and then we're going to add the sugar paste that's been coloured and place it in the fridge just so it can go nice and firm before we release it from the actual mould. So just to recap, we have greased the mould extremely well using vegetable fat. We have then added a small amount of icing sugar, and this fondant has also been in the fridge in that mould for a short while. This allows you to peel it away very, very easily. So the cake has been steamed, no problem there, and now we're just going to simply repeat that process that we did with base tier, but this time we will only need 3 pieces to cover this 6-inch cake, and then just do exactly what I did with the top of the base tier. I'm going to speed this process up. You can use your Dresden tool as well, just to help blend everything together beautifully. And then if you have a steamer, give it a steam at the end just to get rid of any excess icing sugar. Right, so to add the top section, again, it's just like we did with the 10-inch round. So take your lovely chilled piece of fondant that you've taken out of the fridge, stick it directly to the cake. Remember, if you don't have a steamer, you can use edible glue. And then you want to use a sharp knife to cut off any excess fondant. Use your Dresden tool, let everything blend together beautifully. These moulds are extremely versatile, remember, and so easy to use. I'm now going to stack the cake and explain what I would do if the base cake and the top tier were both real cakes ready for a wedding. Now I'm going to explain to you what I'd do if this was a real cake. So I've got my 14-inch round decorated cake drum here. For that I have used the cover paste because it needed to be 5mm thick. Here I have a 10-inch part of one of my baking tins, and I'm going to use that as a guide. I find this great if you're doing wedding cakes because then you can get them really central. If that was not a cake dummy, I would have left that cake in the fridge. It would mean that all the fondant would be really hard. So I would physically be able to touch the sides without damaging it. I would slide it off the table like I'm about to now, remove the baking parchment, place it gently onto my guide. But if it wasn't in the perfect place, if it wasn't bang in the middle, because the sides of the cake would be lovely and hard, I would physically be able to move it without damaging anything. So this is what you want to do if it's a real cake. You then need to dowel the top of that cake. An 8-inch round circle as a guide, just like I did with the cake drum there, so you know where to place your cake dowels. The dummy does not need cake dowels on it, but the cake above the cake dummy is going to be heavy, so you do need to support the weight. So if you dowel it first and then using a small amount of buttercream, you would simply add the next tier, which is the cake dummy. So this is the easy part, and I would actually add this before I got to the wedding venue because it's only a dummy tier. So you would add this to the top and secure it in place with just a small amount of buttercream to stop it from sliding everywhere. So for the final tier, if we just pretend for now that it's real cake, I would have left it in the fridge, driven to the venue. It would have been in a separate box to the base tier and the middle tier, and it would have also been on a cake card. And then at the venue, the cake would have been as cold as it possibly could. There would have been more condensation, so you would have had to be extra careful. But then you just place it directly onto the middle tier again with a small amount of buttercream. But how stunning and simple is all that to me. And remember, I've done this as a free tutorial from home. There's no way I would have done this without these amazing new moulds. Now it's time just for the perfect finishing touch. Thank you all for your continued support. Because you support my channel, because you watch these tutorials, I will be back making more. I'm not going anywhere, guys. I hope I've helped you again today. In fact, I would love to see your photos if you could send them to me using these molds or the sugar paste. Happy baking, everyone, and I'm going to be back very soon.